Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Foundations of Advertising Research course. This lecture in Module 1, What is an Insight? Before we kick off and talk about that, I just thought I'd give you a brief introduction to who I am, because you're going to see me on a few of these lectures. My name is Mark Truss. I'm the Chief Research Officer at the ad agency Wunderman Thompson. I'm also a board member at the ARF, and I'm a longtime adjunct faculty member at NYU. So I'll see you on a few of these lectures. Let me share my screen here. I'm assuming you can all see that. I hope you can. Before we start, I just want to sort of level set how this lecture fits into the module, which fits into the course, which fits into the certificate. You will have seen this already, I think, but this certificate is really about the marketing and advertising journey. And the components of that include applying a modern consumer-centric approach to that journey, identifying the business goals, the objectives, and the strategies relevant to that journey, assessing the requirements of an effective marketing and advertising plan in support of those the business goals that are going to come out of that journey, develop actionable insights from consumer and market data, integrating the research and insights process into that development, testing, and optimization of messaging and creative assets, evaluating how your media choices, your media mix, and your optimal media plans affect that journey and the likelihood you'll be successful, measuring the effectiveness and efficiency of a marketing campaign. And along the way, hopefully you're going to meet a lot of industry leaders who will bring you a perspective that you'll find useful. In this course specifically, you're going to come away with the ability to evaluate the range of research methodologies in that journey, develop an understanding of qualitative versus quantitative research methods, differentiate between the different types of behavioral data, design appropriate success metrics and measurement plans, and a high-level research plan that should accompany that whole process. And specifically in this module, if you're watching them in order, you will have already seen the first two, this being the third of Module 1. And by the end of this module, you should have the ability to explain those steps in the journey, appreciate the importance of research, insights, and analytics, and determine whether information is an actual insight, or is it something else? Is it just information, a finding, a statistic, an observation, or someone's opinion? And we'll talk a lot more about that as we come through this. Research and analytics are about a number of things, right? But in my mind, one of the things that's very important is it's about objectivity, right? We bring an objective view to data in order to assist in that marketing and advertising journey. And that objectivity gives us confidence. It gives marketers the confidence that the decisions they are making are based on high quality, reliable information that are going to give them a competitive advantage in the marketplace. And what supports those two is a deep understanding of humans, people, often consumers, the brands in the marketplace that we're working in, the products and services, how marketing works, the opportunities, threats, and risks, the competitive advantages, and uncovering insights into all of these different things. Research and analytics, sometimes people feel when they're trying to solve a marketing problem, they can go with their gut or their years of experience in the business. And those can be very valuable and very useful. But often we're mistaken into thinking that our own personal experience is representative of the diversity of experiences that exist in our broader marketplace. And that's why insights and research is so important, because we need to understand the variety of opinions, experiences, and behaviors that exist, right? As we say in the business, the sample of one is often wrong. Or said another way that I've heard, me search and research are two different things. Bill Bernbach, who was creative director and co-founder of DDB, a legendary ad agency, he says that, at the heart of an effective ad campaign philosophy is the belief that nothing is so powerful as an insight into human nature. What compulsions drive a man? What instincts dominate his action, even though his language often camouflages what really motivates him. Andy Davidson, who was at Flamingo, an insight creates a new way of thinking that was impossible before, allowing us to express what was previously inexpressible. And Phil Duesenberry, who led BBDO, big ad agency for many years. In the ad business, a good idea can inspire a great commercial, but a good insight can fuel 1,000 ideas and 1,000 commercials. So let's dig a little deeper into this. What is this insight thing that everybody's talking about? And I think a good place to start might be the dictionary. Dictionary says an insight is an instance of apprehending the true nature of a thing, especially through an intuitive understanding, a penetrating mental vision or discernment, the faculty of seeing into the inner character or underlying truth. I think there are certain phrases here that are more important than others. An insight is the true nature of a thing. It is real. There's an intuitive sense about it. So even though the data points you in a specific direction, intuitively it feels right. It's about the inner character of a thing, the underlying truth. Again, this truth thing, this thing that is real. I think a lot of times, especially lately in the industry, people confuse an insight or conflate it with a finding. They use the words almost interchangeably, and I think they're very different. Data is not an insight. An observation is usually not an insight. A consumer's need or a want, maybe it is, often it's not an insight, because an insight is usually not so obvious nor evident, right? So, for example, I had once seen some data that served up an insight that had been found that said 60% of moms prefer to grocery shop on Saturday mornings. And I don't consider that an insight. To me, that's an observation or a statistic. Someone counted how many moms shop on which day of the week. To me, an insight would be trying to understand why they choose Saturday mornings. And if we sort of look at a mom today and what a mom is responsible for and deals with, the vast majority of moms are working moms, so they have full-time jobs with a lot of responsibility. Despite the division of labor in a home, often moms are still largely responsible for child rearing in at least in the US today. Children today are more overcommitted than ever before, and moms are busy running around to, dance lessons and soccer practice and everything else that children do. So moms are really overcommitted. And in some research that we've done and talked to moms about grocery shopping, one of the things we heard pretty clearly is that even though grocery shopping is a chore, it's something that moms like to do by themselves because they are so busy with everything else in their life that this feels like a little time to themselves. That might be an insight into why moms grocery shop on Saturday mornings. As a marketer, if you're a grocery retailer and you know that moms are coming to your store and it's an escape for them, you might talk to them differently, you might organize your store differently, and you might engage with them differently in a way that you wouldn't if you just knew many of them came on Saturday mornings. So an insight often comes from connecting multiple ideas, multiple observations, multiple findings together and looking deeper at what's really going on. Why are they doing what they're doing? So an insight requires a bit of a leap of interpretation, from moms like to grocery shop on Saturday mornings to moms are looking for an escape. That's a bit of a leap of interpretation. So an insight requires some thinking, and therefore it requires some courage, because you don't always have the data that links those together, although in a perfect world you can get those. An insight isn't really found in data, it is created as a result of data. Insights deliver new perspectives, unrecognized fundamental human truths. It's a new way of viewing the world that causes us to re-examine existing conventions, the status quo of how we talk to our consumers. It's a penetrating observation about human behavior, but from a new, fresh perspective, because it's about their underlying motivations and what's driving their actions, right? So observations are about what people do or say. Findings are a summary of what people do or say, and insights tell us why they're doing or saying those things. It answers, so what? Yeah. This is adapted from David Ogilvy's book on Ogilvy on advertising. How do you know when you've got a real insight and you've come across one in your data and you've thought about it? I liked these 5 tests in essence. Ask yourself, did it make you gasp when you heard it? Wow. Do you wish you had thought of it yourself? Is it unique? Does it fit your brand strategy to perfection? And could you use it for the next 30 years instead of just the next ad campaign? Scott Bedbury, if you're not familiar with him, he was at Nike when they created the Just Do It campaign, worldwide advertising director, and the CMO at Starbucks. And he talks about insights in a way that I think is very insightful, pun intended. Insights have far more in common with intuition and imagination than it does with deliberate and conscious thinking based on deductive reasoning. When was the last time you looked at data and thought about intuition and imagination? Insights are not facts. People don't tell you insights, and statistics don't identify them. Insights have to be discovered, which means that discovering an insight is more a part of an organic, creative process than a linear, formulaic research protocol. It means that getting to good, solid data and using all the rules we know about how to do that, that's critical. Because without that, you can never get to an insight. But once you have all that data, making the leap to an insight is more of an intuitive, imaginative, creative process of connecting the dots and thinking about what the data are telling you. Carol Phillips had a great bit on how do you spot insights? Where do you look to try and find those bits of information that lead to an insight? Insights usually say more about the target consumer than they do about the product or service. Not always. Sometimes there are insights about products and services, but more often it's about the consumer themselves. And often insights are more about the category that product is in than the brand itself. Insights often reveal more about how people want to feel than about how they want to think. Insights focus more on what is enduring than what is new. It's more about the human condition and human truth than it is about the latest fad or thing happening in the world. And as we already said, insights stimulate new ideas and thinking. It's not kind of the same old stuff. As I've said, insights explain behavior. They don't describe it. Mom's grocery shopping on Saturday mornings describes the behavior. They're doing it because they want a little bit of a break and an escape. That explains why they're doing it. Insights are explanatory, not descriptive. Insights are not about what the consumer does, but what drives them to do it. And again, insights answer more about why and a little less about what. In your readings, you would have seen Sawhney and Khosla have identified 7 key ways to look for insights. And let's just go through those briefly. Anomalies and extremities. There's so much information out there today, right? That often when you read data and look at data, you will see things reduced to norms, averages, means, percent of people saying top box, top 2 box. And unfortunately, while that helps us manage the complexity of the data, it can lead to overly broad conclusions. And sometimes looking at the fringes, the tails of the curve, you can find insight. Who are these people who buy my product 10 times more than everybody else? Who are those people? What's motivating them to do it? Is there any learning in there that I can understand? Confluence of trends. When several trends come together, their intersection can be fertile ground for insights. So we have to think beyond our data. We have to think about what are the major political, economic, social, technological, legal, regulatory, cultural, environmental trends affecting my organization, my industry, my market, my consumers, and how do those things come together? Right. So for instance, if you're combining the concept of an aging population and the trend of voice-activated computing and the trend of rising healthcare costs, could that lead to a new service such as remote healthcare monitoring for seniors? That's audio activated, right? Think about beyond your data. What are your consumers' pain points? What about your retailers' pain points, your distributors' pain points? It's good to be an active participant in forums and groups online where your customers aggregate, not as a one-off project, but as a regular exercise. I remember reading Jack Welch, the famed CEO of General Electric, his first week on the job, he went and manned the consumer complaint line because he wanted to hear straight from the customer's mouth what their experience was with this company that he was running. There's a lot of value in getting really close to your customer, and surveys do it. Qualitative research does it. Web analytics data can do it. But getting really personal with your consumers and thinking about creative ways to do that gives you new insight into what they're doing. I like this line: walk a mile in my shoes, see what I see, hear what I hear, feel what I feel. Then maybe you'll understand why I do what I do. Orthodoxies. What orthodoxies are hiding in your organization, your industry, your market? What are the advertising orthodoxies, right? Who would have thought before Geico that you could use humor to sell insurance? Before Geico, that was considered a non-starter. Insurance is a very serious business. You don't joke about it until Geico did. And now everybody does, right? What beliefs are you holding sacred about your consumer, your patient, your organization, your market? Do things have to be that way? What if the reverse were true? What if we totally flipped it on its head? What opportunities would be opened up? What things would we walk away from? Challenge orthodoxies. Voyages. You need to get out of the office. You need to get away from your desk. Like I was saying before, can you listen in to customer call-in lines? Can you listen to your salespeople and what they're saying? You have to go out and experience what your consumer is experiencing. You really learn a lot by doing that as opposed to just looking at data. Analogies. Imagine insights have passports and can travel. How can you import insights from other groups in your organization or from a competitor or from another business, even if they seem far-flung from your business? The industry has added a few additional ways of thinking about looking for insights. Let's talk about those. Always aware, always on. Pay attention to everything all the time, as if you are a consumer of everything. What are people doing? What are people talking about? What are brands doing? How is technology changing commerce, especially outside your category, outside your industry? Keep a notebook of different observations over time. These will help you when you are then analyzing data and thinking about what does this mean? Analogies and being always on help us think about the situation we are in. Think about tensions and contradictions, right? Tensions are clues to where insights may be. Tensions are where there's two competing ideas being held at the same time, right? Community, I value community. At the same time, I value individuality. I value tradition, but I also like innovation. I value constraint, but I also need freedom, right? Dove, real beauty. That's where that idea was born from. The way women actually look versus the way women are portrayed in media. Persil, if you don't know the campaign, it's a campaign, I believe it was the UK. It's a laundry detergent. And the tension they were leveraging in their communications was a parent's desire to keep their children clean, because clean equals healthy. Yet parents also had a desire to have their children explore the world around them, which often meant getting dirty. That's a tension that they talked about. They had a campaign, Dirt is Good. Wall Street Journal. This was from some work I did in my class, where we were trying to sell Wall Street Journal student subscriptions to graduate students. And we heard this really interesting tension that the students thought very highly of the content that was in the Wall Street Journal and would be happy to quote it in class or use it as a source in one of their papers. Yet they would never want to be seen on campus carrying it. Because while they had a very desirable view of the content, they held a very dim view of the people who read it, because they thought they were the 1%ers who didn't care about anyone else. That's what this data told us. That's an interesting tension. Reverse engineer good ideas. When you come across a good idea anywhere, try reverse engineering it by saying to yourself, what insight do we think led to that idea? Who are they targeting that to? Why? What has that company understood about their customer that their competitors might have missed? This is about exercising your insight muscle. The more you do it, the more likely it is you're going to be able to spot them using your own data. Think about reframing your question. Questioning the question. Often the answer you come up with is baked into the question you are asking of the data. So as this source once said, before you start brainstorming, start framestorming. For example, if you ask, how should we plan a birthday party for David? Right out of the gate, you're assuming it's a party. Whereas if you reframe that to be, how can we make David's day memorable? Now you've opened up a world of possibilities that weren't possible before. I want to show you a framework for finding insights that I use in my daily work at Wunderman Thompson. If we think about the source material for insights, it's always data, right? So if you imagine each one of these blue dots is a finding in your data, an observation, something that made you say, that's interesting. And you write down all those little bits, all those little observations. You found whatever, 10, 20, 30 of them. And then when you think about them all together, what is the summary of those findings and observations? Then you think about culture and what's happening in culture. When I say culture, I don't mean the arts or pop culture. What I mean is everything that surrounds us. How we drink our coffee, where we drink our coffee, how we commute to the office, what's important to us during our day, everything. Someone in my office once described it as culture is the operating system for which we live our lives, which I thought was a really good definition of culture. It's everything we experience in our day. And what are all the things happening in culture that are relevant to our category, our brand, or our consumer? And when we think about all those things together, what new ideas come to us? And then what's the consumer experience with our category, with our product, how they go about buying it, how they go about experiencing it, and what are all the different learnings about customer experience? And what do we think differently when we think about all those together? And then, as I talked about before, what's the consumer tension? Is there a tension in this category, with this product, with this brand that we can leverage? And insights live at the confluence of these four areas of inquiry. Let me give you an example. The brand Abercrombie and Fitch, clothing apparel brand that maybe you're all familiar with. Abercrombie and Fitch targets younger people, 12 to 18-ish kind of range. And in my class, we studied this a bit. And probably one of the biggest findings when you put all the data together is that, parents have to give their kids clothes and give their kids money for clothes, but they don't want to spend a lot of money on it. We asked a couple of interesting questions. We surveyed teenage kids and we surveyed their parents. And in both surveys, we asked them, when you have to go buy clothes, here's a list of retailers. Where do you go first? Where do you go second? Where do you go third? Well, they had to rank all of them. When you talk to kids, number one, Abercrombie and Fitch. Number two at the time, American Apparel. Number three, Banana Republic. Dead last, Walmart. Kids don't want to go to Walmart to buy their clothes. You ask the parents the same question, you get almost a mirror image of that list. Number one was Walmart. Number two was Target. Way down at the bottom, Abercrombie and Fitch. Right? And what the parents were telling us in the research is, they know they have to get clothes on their kids and they'll buy those clothes. But if the kid wants an $80 sweatshirt because it's got a cool moose on it, they say to their kids, you spend your money on that. I'm going to give you the clothes to dress you. You take care of the fashion side of that. What do we know about culture, teen culture? What's important to teens? Well, for most teens, socialization, peer acceptance, finding out who you are and where you fit in is paramount to them, almost to the exclusion of everything else. It's extremely, extremely important. And what do we know about teen experience in this category? Well, for teens, the clothes they wear often tells other people, are they in the in crowd? Are they in the out crowd? Do they get it? Are they hip? Are they cool? And what's the consumer tension here? Teens want to be accepted, but they don't want to be seen as working hard to be accepted. They want it to feel natural. So when you pull all these together, what is Abercrombie and Fitch all about as a brand? Well, one insight is that, yeah, they sell clothes, but they're really about social credibility. Simple, easy social credibility. And if that's true, then that makes you think differently about Abercrombie and Fitch and who they compete with, right? Certainly they compete with other apparel brands. But they also, since the kids are spending their money on these things to show other people that they're cool and they get it, it also competes with any other place where teenage kids spend their money to show their friends that they get it. So it could be the Apple Store. It could be Xbox. It could be GameStop. It could be any other place where they spend their own money to show everyone that they're with it and they get it. That's a different orientation as a marketer than we are just selling really cool apparel. Here's another example, Lee Jeans. I don't know if you know the brand. When you start to look at the brand, a couple of things you notice pretty quickly is that the brand has not a lot of brand equities, and the ones they have are all functional. Very little emotional resonance with the brand. And that functional equity is mainly around comfortable fit, which is what they talk about in a lot of their marketing. What do we know about culture? What's happening in culture these days? A lot of stuff happening, but one of the big things is we live in a world of fake. Fake news, deep fakes, counterfeit, faux, hard to know what's real and what's not. That's a big thing happening in culture today. And what do we know about consumer experience and who Lee is marketing to? Generally older people. The definition of cool clothes and what's cool changes as we get older. And what's a consumer tension here? Well, it's kind of interesting. People expend a great amount of time and effort curating their online image on social media and making sure people see them in a certain light. Yet in the same breath, tell us that they desire authenticity and realness and genuineness. So what do we think when we pull all of these together? Well, one strategy for Lee could be about the consumer, and their consumer is for people who are comfortable in their own skin. So in other words, redefining comfort a bit to be less of a functional attribute and more of an emotional attribute, because being comfortable in your own skin is people who are confident, people who feel genuine, and those are desirable traits in a person. So just two examples of that. Right? And if we can find these kind of insights from market research, it helps us understand the sweet spot of marketing and advertising between what the brand wants to say and communicate to their consumers and what the consumer is interested in. Right? So insights, and again, I'm talking about these powerful insights, not just observations, not just statistics, not just findings, but insight into why people do what they do. They help us understand what our target audience is really interested in, what's happening in their world, what's engaging to them, what's going to stand out and catch their attention, what might feel relevant to them. And then, of course, importantly, what motivates them to action and which emotions are we trying to stimulate to get to that insight and reveal that? Okay, that's the end of this little lecture. If you have questions, you can post those on the course site or bring them up at the next synchronous session. It's been good chatting with you all. Be well.